and I am a SharePoint solutions developer. And I do a lot with SharePoint. I've been working on custom solutions over the last 10 years. And I do all kinds of things within the Microsoft 365 space. In addition to my work on SharePoint consulting, I have a SharePoint YouTube channel, which is called SharePoint Smart. And in addition to that, I have a platform called SharePoint Dashboards, which are dashboard templates that allow you to make views and pages in SharePoint that look nice. I work with Infowise on Ultimate Forms, and that's the software we're going to focus on in our presentation today. And it's about making things simple and easy, and also we want to keep improving our tools. Ultimate Forms is a software that you can add directly to your SharePoint environment. This is a comprehensive toolkit, and you do not have to be a developer in order to use our tools. You can deploy all of our solutions without having to do anything with code. We are recording our session today, and we will have this available and posted on YouTube to play back in case you want to review any of the content. If you have any questions during our meeting or comments, feel free to post in the Q&A section. That's the way to interact with us during the presentation. Our software is available both for Microsoft 365 and for on-premise SharePoint. So regardless of which SharePoint version you have, this is going to be accessible to you in your SharePoint environment. Let's start out at a high level and talk about some of the factors involved when it comes to an employee review system. And before we get into logistics of how this is implemented in SharePoint, let's talk about some of the goals and things to be aware of. Why is it as an organization we need to do reviews? What makes these important? Some of the critical components include we want to have clear goals with employees in terms of expectations and what we want them to accomplish in their work and in their team. We want to foster good communications between managers and employees, and a review cycle is a good way to ensure that those conversations are happening. When our workers are doing well and helping our business thrive, we need to provide recognition and help to motivate them for the good work that they're doing. This is also a good chance to identify gaps in skills where we need to address that and go ahead and schedule training and add that as part of those goals. So this is a good chance to have a conversation on training. Overall career development is another thing that should be discussed. So we're looking to improve the skills of our workers, but we also want to, of course, retain them and have a situation where they can progress and enhance their responsibilities and contribute more to the organization. We want to make sure that at an individual level, what our workers are accomplishing align with our organizational goals. We have certain critical factors in our organization that we need to address. So we want to make sure everybody is mutually working to achieve those goals. We want to address issues proactively instead of, dealing with things when they're a problem. So an annual review is a way to recognize things early in case there needs to be adjustments or things that need to be called to attention. Our system's going to provide for better accountability compared to if we didn't have reviews. So it's a way to document what's happening in terms of those achievements and performance. And this is a way to have that all tracked and nothing's going to slip through the cracks. And then we want to have continuous improvement in our organization. So documenting these goals and providing things to shoot for our employees that's going to allow for that to happen. And then, of course, legal protection is a factor. When employees are terminated, of course, there's always a risk of legal action in some scenarios. So we need to have documentation that shows these conversations that were being had that could be extremely important later from an HR perspective. All right, so With annual reviews, it's can often be a negative for the employee, and we need to think about why that could be in order to help alleviate or eliminate some of those risks. So let's think about why employees might not like a review. Uh, Receiving criticism is hard for most of us, and that can be stressful and feel negative. It's not easy to hear criticism. It can feel like a one-sided conversation from the perspective of the employee. If the manager is simply stating to them how they did, what they've done well, what they haven't done well, and it's a one-way conversation. We need to avoid that situation. It should be a two-sided conversation. There can be a perception of bias from the organization between different employees, question about fairness in terms of, how people perform. There could be a fear of negative consequences. If I've been told that I'm not doing things correctly, I might be afraid that I'm going to lose my job, or something bad like that could happen. Reviews are often tied with pay. There could be an expectation on the part of the employee that they deserve to be compensated at a certain level, and they're going to correlate that with this review. And of course, that would leave a bad taste in your mouth if you feel you're really benefiting your company and not being rewarded the way that you feel that you deserve. And there could be a disconnect there. It could be that I get a really great review and I've done well, and I'm anticipating, a financial reward connected to that. And if that's not the case, that would be negative for the employee. So those are things that we need to be aware of, so that we can adopt a strategy to, eliminate some of that. The most important thing in strategy is to try to keep a positive culture around reviews. It's something that your whole organization is going to do. We want to keep things constructive, and make sure we come at it from that perspective. We want to set achievable goals that are measurable, easy to define, so that we can recognize those goals being achieved on successive reviews. It's very important that there's regular check-ins to reviews to not have this situation where there's no conversation over the course of the year, and then there's this build up for this review at the end of the year. So in some way, shape, or form, there needs to be regular check-ins which are part of the review cycle. We want to emphasize two-way communication, so the voice of the employee is important. It needs to be documented and heard, and we want to make sure that when there is that review meeting between manager and employee, that definitely is a two-way conversation, and the feedback from employees is heard. We want to celebrate achievements, so those good workers who are really making that positive impact, this is the time to recognize that. And we need to link that performance to rewards. There definitely needs to be a correlation with that. And we need to train our managers. We can't just assume that our managers are automatically going to know how to conduct themselves and do a good job during this review cycle. So we need to actually facilitate some training to make sure that they're well prepared for that. Now let's get into factors as far as the training system in SharePoint and talk about how that can be implemented in SharePoint and what we need to make sure it includes. I mentioned at the beginning, we want to make sure there's no programming. That's a key factor. And what I'll show you, you don't have to be a SharePoint developer. You can set this system up. In fact, this template will be available and I will upload it later today. And you can download this into your own SharePoint and play around with it, and you can use exactly what I'm going to show. We want it to be a simple multi-stage process where there's a clear start and end to our review cycle. And we're going to facilitate for a employee self-assessment through our form in SharePoint. And also the manager in the next stage will do their assessment after the employee has documented their information. We need to secure content in the review based on role. So we've got different roles here. We have the role of the employee, the role of the manager, and the role of HR. We need to make sure the form looks different, has different accessibility depending on what role you have in the process. We need email notifications to go out to remind people when to do the reviews. And we also, at the end of this, are going to need a PDF auto-generated, which has the full report of that review for the employee. We want to include instructions in the form so everybody knows what to do and it's not confusing. And we need to be able to schedule these automatically. So we're going to kick off that review cycle and have everybody begin at the same time. This should include goal planning and accomplishments that should be documented in the form. And then on our dashboards, we want to have KPI indicators and date tracking. So those are features and functionality that we actually want in SharePoint in our forms. All right, now we're actually going to drop into SharePoint. And I'm going to first take you through from a user perspective, and then afterwards I'm going to show you how it's set up in the back end, show you how you're able to adjust the system and adapt it to your own organization so that you can accomplish what you want. All right, so this is my dashboard. I've got a couple of reviews in there, and I'm going to walk you through the whole process by creating a review. I'll do that right now. So I'm in my SharePoint list, and what you'll notice right away is that the form looks totally different than what you would normally see in SharePoint when you create a new form. Let me refresh my page real quick. There it goes. Okay. A thing I really want to emphasize and have you think about is the simplicity, because the review process can get complicated. We really want to avoid it being confusing for our users. So this is very simple to go through the steps. So this form is going to change according to the stage I am at in this review process. So this step, I'm just assigning it. So this is going to be a review for me. So I'll put my own name in, and then my manager. And this is going to be for Q4, 2024. And our initial stage is employee status. So I've got the review started. Then we've got some history tracking so we can keep track of our progress along the way. So this indicates that my review is started. Extremely simple start to the process. Now we've got these arrows showing where we are in the process. So below that are some test records I did before this. I'm going to be putting in dummy data. And what you'll notice as I go through this process, the arrows are going to change to indicate what stage we are in the review process. This is going to be very handy to you as you have your reviews, because of course you've got lots and lots of employees to track. So this dashboard is going to be very useful to HR to make sure everybody's going through their stages and all the reviews are going to get done on time. So the employee will automatically get an email, and I am going to check my inbox, and I should see that soon. I'll show you that in a second when it comes through. And now the employee can get a link. They're going to go right to their form, and they can go ahead and put in their information. Notice the form changed. Notice this is all read-only now. I'm an admin, so I made the status directly editable by myself. Let me show you what the email looks like for the employee. So they just get a simple email and they can click the edit link. It'll take them right into the form. Not hard to understand. It just says your review is ready to begin. Access your review, enter your information and click submit. Very simple to understand. Here's the baked in instructions. Will Cooper, please provide a detailed description of your 3 most important goals, so on and so forth. These fields are totally under your control. So this system just has some example fields. In our case, we have goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, improvements and achievements. But you can have whatever fields you want. You may want to include a rating system. You may have other feedback that you want to do as part of your review cycle. That's easy to adapt and adjust. When I get into the form tool later, I'll show you where you can adjust those. We want to make sure we get all their data before they can submit. So right now it says complete all required fields. You'll notice there's no way for me to submit anything. That's by design. We want to make sure they get everything in there before they can go to the next stage. All right, so I'm just putting in dummy text here because I'm sure we don't want to sit here dreaming up things for this information. So I'm going to do a lot of copy and paste this stage. So I'm filling in my goals. Notice that I still cannot submit because I don't have everything yet. But once I've put everything in, now a button appears. So I can finally do my submittal. So we're using some validation in the form to make sure we get everything and we don't get incomplete information. And I can do a handwritten signature. And then I just click submit. Okay, so here we are. Now it's to the manager. Just like the employee, manager is going to get an email prompting them to alert them that their employee has submitted their information, and they'll know to do their step. Notice we've got dates for tracking too. So we've got a review started date, employee reviewed. So we'll be able to see as we go through those stage gates, date stamps, so we can monitor and track progress. That's going to be a real key part of this system. So Michael's going to get an email. It's going to say, hey, Will submitted his review. Time for you to do your work. Notice that the form keeps changing. These are what you would call dynamic forms. And that means they change according to your role or according to data in the form. So the stage of the form has changed. We're now at the manager stage. Notice manager sees what the employee submitted, but they can't change that. They shouldn't be able to change that. Here's our manager email. Let me pull that up for you. Here's email to Michael. Hey, Michael, Will's ready for you to review. He's submitted. Real simple. Michael will say, okay, all right, I'll go in and check out what you put. All right, so the manager's got their own tab. They've got their own section they fill out. This only appeared now that I'm at this stage. And the manager can review what employees put and put in their own notes. Okay, I'm just putting in dummy information. Works the same way as for the employee. Manager can't submit until they get all their information in. Submit button appears because now I have all the required fields. So we're never going to have anything go through the pipes without the required information. I'm playing part of manager and employee in this situation, but naturally that wouldn't be the case normally. So now the manager can submit. They click the submit button. Immediately it will advance to the next stage. Oh, I did something which updated it. Try that one more time. There it goes. All right, so now we're at the HR. See how these arrows are changing? So it's really obvious as I look through the list of employees where it is in the process. So at the end of the review cycle, as a final step, typically HR needs to have an opportunity to review and see the notes, make sure everything looks good before everything gets closed out. So HR is going to have their own form section, so they can go in and add notes if they need to and sign off, just to confirm that everything's right, that we don't need to check back with the manager on anything. They can sign, and now HR can submit as a final step. So that's all there was for this review cycle. So when that's completely closed out, there's one additional thing we want, and that's a fully baked PDF for record keeping, especially for HR, which we know can never be changed. We want to get that snapshot. And that's done through a print template. I'm going to show you how that's going to work. So HR can come back in here at the very end of the review cycle when everybody's done their reviews. And I've got a button in here that only appears at this stage, which is archive. Notice also we've got history tracking, which gives us the date timestamps, indicates when all the updates took place on this form. Notice the form's also read-only, so no manager or employee could go back and revise what they had already put. We wouldn't want that. So when I do click archive, what happens is it triggers an action in the background, which creates a PDF, which will show up automatically within the SharePoint site. I'm sending them to our documents library. You could send them to any library. As with any SharePoint list or library, you can permission this to ensure that only the appropriate people, can have access to that. So here's our PDF. And this is, a full documentation of, everything from that employee review. It's a read-only PDF. And now we've got that for record keeping in case we need to go back to that on future reviews or for some reason in the future. That's it. That's the process. Now, this is a model of how things can flow. This is very adaptable, and you can change this and include whatever fields and information you want in the process. And I'm going to show you from the forms perspective now how that would work. Notice also we've got the signature from HR. We've got the date tracking. So these dashboards are going to be really important in the process just to see where each of them are. So with Ultimate Forms tools installed, it gives you access to this whole toolkit, and I can go into Form Designer, and I'm going to show you a little bit about how this form is configured. This is fluid. You can adapt it in terms of the look and feel, the functionality, the fields. Any of these things can be adjusted according to your own review process. So rather than thinking about this as something you just download and use as is, think about something that's very adaptable, which you can mold to your own process to make sure you get all the data you want on the reviews, you include the stages you want, and includes all the features you want. All of this can be adjusted. So in the form, we have these different stages, and a really key part to this are these rules which control when sections appear and whether they're read or write. And I'm going to show you how that works. On any element in the form, I can set permissions rules without having to do coding. So in this case, it said if the status is employee, I want this whole section, everything in that box, to be writable for that in display form, as long as this condition is met, status equals employee. I just have to set that rule. That's all there is to it. And then I want another rule that says I want people to see that if it's not status employee, but it's going to be read only. So I just had to select that read radio button, set this condition, status not equal employee. That's all that I had to do to get that dynamic form functionality. Another factor you saw when I was demonstrating is we don't want the employee to be able to submit the review until they get everything in there. And so I did a permissions rule, and I make it so that their submit button only appears when they are ready to submit. So I set a rule for that button. I said, if goal 1's not blank, goal 2's not blank, so on and so forth. In other words, if all these fields have their data as they're supposed to, then and only then do I want to show my button. So it's writable with these conditions. I merely had to pick from drop-down pickers, set these simple rules, and now I have the dynamic form functionality. That button only appears when we're ready for that button to appear. And then it's rinse and repeat. So I did the same thing for the manager section and HR section and so on. Now, if you think about the HR section, maybe we only want HR to ever see that section. I can do things that have to do with who the person is specifically. So in your organization, you have specific managers who are HR managers. And in order to facilitate that, you can use the setting for users and groups, and you can specify SharePoint security groups, Microsoft 365 security groups, or you can even just explicitly put in names that will make it so that that part of the form is only accessible to those specific users only. For everybody else, they will see nothing at all. In a review system, that's going to be very important to have the ability to do that. So that's some of what's going on in the form. And then we have some sections which are read-only. These dates are automatically updated when the buttons are pushed. And then we have a history section that has some automatic tracking. That's also tied to the buttons. We can kick off certain actions so that when someone clicks on this custom button, I can have it update other fields. If you look on the right hand side, you're going to see that when this button gets clicked, it does action and save. And I've told it to make some updates in my form. I've told it to update the status to manager. I have another field called email trigger, which we're coming to. I'm going to show you the email alerts. I want it to update the history with information about what just took place. And then I want to update the employee submitted date to now. And it does all these updates instantly when I click the button. Very easy to understand, no programming needed. And I have this dynamic form with these awesome buttons, which move everything forward. The email setup is very easy to work with. You just go into our alert section, and these are the email rules. I just come in here and define a rule. As an example, this is when a new review has been created. I define who I want it to go to, and then I define the content of the email. It will reference fields in the form, so pretty easy to understand. If you look, you'll notice there's square brackets, so I'm referencing the employee. So in my case, it said, "Hello, Will Cooper. Your review is ready to complete." And then I can also use this edit item link that just automatically generates a link directly to the form. They don't have to go searching for the review. They just click the link and they're in the form immediately. Very easy to work with the email templates. So you'll definitely need those at each of the stages. So as you can see, I've got one to nudge the manager and let them know they need to perform their step. And then the same thing for HR. We want to let them know when it's time for them to do what they're supposed to do. The email template is defined under our print and export. You can define print templates very easily. I use the simple print template method, which means that all you have to do is select the fields. So I just went through here in the drop downs. I put in some section headers and listed out the fields I wanted, saved my print template, and I was ready to go. And then additional to that, I set an action, which is triggered automatically. I don't want HR to have to manually create the PDFs. I want that to happen for them automatically. And I made that work by setting a rule where it says status after change is archived. It will auto-generate this PDF and send it to the document library. I can also have that automatically go out to email if I wish. So it's flexible in terms of how I define that. So a lot of different options in terms of how to get this to work. Now, when you look at this later today, we'll have a link and you can download the template to this system. So when you download the free trial, you can access our solution catalog. And this template will be the first tile that you'll see under Infowise webinars. That's how you can download and play around with the solution I'm presenting today. In the Infowise site, you will find a link here that says try now for free. So if you don't already have Ultimate Forms, you can access the full software for 30 days. And you can do that by clicking on that button, then click on Install Now under Installation, and you can go ahead and get your trial running. So that's how you can get started and then gain access to the template. There's lots of information on our site about our software. You can look at other examples of presentations on different types of solutions that are available. That's under webinars. And we have documentation and training available on our site as well. So the very first time you're using our tools, if you want to just do a basic tutorial, we have something called Kickstart Training, and that'll show you how to build your first form and do the initial setup. And from there, you can go on to, look at our other tutorials on how to use our tools. If you're interested in getting information on training, we do offer formal training. That's also under resources. And then there's lots of articles about new features and functions that are added to our product. So lots and lots of information about our tools for you to learn more. The most important next step for you would be to install the software if you don't already have it. If you're not a global admin in your SharePoint environment, you'll need to reach out to them and ask them to install the trial so that you can begin to play around and practice with the tools. And that's most of the information there. Let me jump to the chat real quick. I'm going to try to address questions from those of you who have questions about our system. There's a question about how data is passed. George, this data is entirely in your SharePoint list. So this is a form that displays on top of that SharePoint list, and it'll be contained entirely in your site. The email notifications is tied to your own system. You can define who the recipient is. So the email is going to come from whichever user you define. So everything's going to be from your tenant from that perspective. Okay, I'll keep my eyes open to see if you guys have any other questions. And we'll go on to the next part of the presentation, but feel free to chime in with any questions as you have them. There's a question about, can managers be set based upon manager relationships in Active Directory? Great question, Lowell. The best way to do this is to create a secondary list in the same site, which has those relationships. I've worked with customers and done that. So basically we'll have an employees list where we define that. And when your review process kicks off, we can use a workflow to look that up and then accomplish what you want, which is to auto-populate the employees and manager names when you kick off the review cycle. So that's the best way to facilitate what you're talking about. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is SharePoint dashboards. A couple of those templates were used in the dashboard that you saw during the presentation. This site is a companion tool. It's something you could use in addition to Ultimate Forms if you're interested in making great looking SharePoint dashboards. When you go into this site and you click on the green button, you're going to see some tile previews of templates. There are 214 templates in here. The two that you saw were progress arrows, which is, let me see here. I know the category. I'll show you where that is. There it is, process stages. That was one of the templates that was included in there. And then also the photo picture of the person that appeared under the employee name. Those are a couple of templates that were there. This is a access that you can do for free initially. You can sign up at the site and get access to 21 templates that allows you to try it out, see how things work, and use some of the more popular templates. Some of the button templates are good examples of that. So in SharePoint lists, it's nice to have an edit button, for example. So if you want to add an edit button to your SharePoint list, this is a free, easy to use button that you can add to your SharePoint column. Very easy to configure. You just pick from the selectors on the left-hand side, and you can do anything you want to change the look and feel of that to whatever color scheme you want to use, that type of thing. And then from there you can try different templates. A lot of these have to do with charting and status indicators. So on each of these, you can just click into the template, and then there is a video which demonstrates how to use that specific template. There is a video tutorial button, and that'll show you exactly what to do to apply this in SharePoint. You don't have to install any software in order to use this. You just copy and paste from the SharePoint dashboard site over to your SharePoint online site, and it's literally that easy. So it's very easy to work with. In order to use this particular tool, you only need a license for the person who's applying the template. So unlike some other tools, you don't have to get a whole bunch of licenses for your SharePoint environment. You just need a license for yourself and or other members of your team that are building out solutions. So there's lots of different options to check out here. So if you're interested in adding some visual representations of your SharePoint list and making things look nice, SharePoint dashboards is an additional option that you can consider. If any of you guys want more information, if you want to have a one-on-one conversation with us, we're very open to that. On the Ultimate Forms site, there is an option to sign up for a demo that's linked on this page. You just need to go to the demo link on there and you can sign up for a web meeting and we'll get together with you and we can discuss your project and environment and any specific questions that you have. All right, so that concludes our main presentation. I'm going to go ahead and keep things going for a while to address any additional questions that you guys have.